Hey, noble ones, welcome back. Here I am. Very late at night. It's 1:45 a.m. and I'm gonna go to bed very soon. But before, I wanted to kind of give you an update when it comes to my report of the horrible incident that happened in Michigan during the shooting at the LDS church. In the previous video, we were speculating as to possible motives when it seems like we have a much better understanding of that now, so I wanted to cover it. So this is the shooter or the gunman, Thomas Jacob Sanford. We have already shown his face yesterday, but I found quite a few interesting images from his Facebook that we can use to try and figure out what his motives were. And yes, I doubled down on my post on X. He was absolutely a piece of shit. As you know, he was neutralized. More on that later, because I've got something to say about that too. So on my video yesterday, based on the information that I had, I speculated 3 possible motives that could make sense from a logical perspective. Motive number 1 that I presented was, well, maybe this was an anti-religion, specifically an anti-Mormon sentiment, maybe some kind of hatred that he had towards the LDS church. I mean, that's the most basic one you would think, considering the fact that he shot, a Mormon church. The second thing that I said was, if this is a politically motivated crime, then it would be more likely for this guy to be a leftist rather than a right-winger, simply because LDS members, generally speaking, tend to be conservative and their views are very traditionalist. So from the perspective of left-wing positions, they would be bigots. However, I noticed that some people were offended at accusing me, oh, you are stating without proof that he was a leftist. And I'm like, did you even attend first grade elementary school grammar classes if at the beginning of a clause makes it into an hypothetical sentence? So, I only said if this is politically motivated, it would make more sense. But I also said if the guy ends up being MAGA, then I'll report it. Then it would be MAGA. My third position was, or maybe it was just a maniac. That was the least likely. Now, it seems like I was right. So, what you see here is an interview with this man, Chris Johnson, who claims he talked to the church shooter. And some of the information he reveals appears to point, we're going to watch it together, but some of the information that he reveals appears to point to the fact that this was indeed a crime of pure hatred against LDS members and specifically the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, in this case, this would not be a politically motivated shooting, like, for instance, Charlie Kirk's shooting, but it would rather be a specific case of a private matter, if you will, between this guy, the shooter, the piece of shit that I explained earlier on, and the church. So we're going to watch this in a minute, sort of on the second half of this video. But first, I want to point out a few important matters when we deal with these kind of situations, shootings, particularly in the early stages of reporting. What's important to say is that, of course, everybody is now trying to claim him, right? In other words, anytime there is a shooter, everyone is going to try and claim that he belongs to the opposite side of the political spectrum, even before we know if the shooting has any connection to a political activity. I've seen people making absolute statements, people saying he is a liberal, a crazy liberal, and that's why he shot members of this church. And then I've seen people saying, no, he's MAGA. Why? Because he had 2 flags, a pickup truck, and he was a veteran. Now, I would like to speak a little bit about the concept of veterans for a second, if you don't mind. First and foremost, simply because you're a veteran, it doesn't mean that you're a conservative. Case in point, regardless, another thing that I want to point out is this. I've seen people postulating that this could have been a case of PTSD, right? Because a lot of veterans do struggle with that, particularly after deployments. And it seems like that this guy was indeed deployed in Iraq. And then I've seen people say, well, if you struggle mentally, I wish he offed himself rather than going on a killing spree. Now, let me make this 100% clear. This guy was an absolute piece of shit. However, it is absolutely wrong and unbecoming to propose the idea of someone unaliving themselves or offing themselves because they're struggling mentally, particularly when it comes to veterans. This is a horrible thing to say because a lot of veterans are at risk of S-word that I can't use because otherwise YouTube demonetizes me, unaliving themselves. You shouldn't say that. Once again, I'm not trying to say the PTSD is somehow of an excuse. Absolutely not. Of course, this guy is garbage. And I think every veteran watching this, thank you for your service, by the way, will agree with me. This is inexcusable. This guy had a relationship with a Mormon. He got burnt by it and decided to take it on to the entire church. He was a maniac. But you should never suggest, oh, if you're struggling mentally with PTSD because of deployment, because of service, then just off yourself. No, the right thing to say, it's very disrespectful to our veterans, who fought for your freedom, by the way, and mine. No, what you should say is, you should seek help. You should seek professional help, and hopefully that can avoid things escalating this way. But once again, this wasn't a situation, I wanted to make that one very clear. But once again, this wasn't a situation of pure mental health. This was specifically a situation of anti-Mormon hatred because of personal experiences that this guy had. And that is important to underline. Now, do you remember when I said not every case is political? The assassination of Charlie Kirk was a case of political violence because the shooter targeted him specifically because of his politics, in this case, conservative politics, hated him because of his beliefs. And we know that that's a fact, not only because the family has told us that the guy had become radicalized onto the left-wing, extreme left-wing sphere, but also because, I mean, he wrote on the freaking ammo, "Catch this fascist." And to anyone who tries to say, oh no, that's just because of video games, you're a liar. It's not video games. It is a case of political violence, 100%. I know people tried to twist it and say, no, the shooter was a conservative, was a Trump supporter. He loved freaking Matt Walsh. He loved him, Matt Walsh. And that's why you shoot one of the guys who brought so many youth to vote for Trump. Come on, make it make sense. No, we know it. Can't twist it anymore. This is a case of political violence. We know it is a confirmed case of political violence. Now, whatever political affiliation this guy has, and we'll review some of the information that we have through to his Facebook page before they scrubbed it. We got some screenshots. Whatever political affiliation this guy may have, whether he's a fervent Democratic voter or whether he's like a full-on MAGA, and we see a picture with a red hat, "Make America Great Again," it doesn't matter in this case. Why? Because this wasn't a case of political violence. So whatever party affiliation you may have doesn't matter. Every shooter will most likely have a voting past. But if the shooting they do are because they snap, whatever the other reason there may be, or in this case because he hated Mormons, that's not a political statement. We didn't find a manifesto. If we find a manifesto and he says, "I hate all Mormons because they are right-wing bigots," that's different. Now it's a politically motivated action. At the same time, how could you even make it make sense from a right-wing perspective? I'm going to try and be imaginative here. Imagine, however, that he wrote a manifesto for a moment, and on this manifesto he says how much he hates the left. He says, oh, all Mormons are not right-wing enough. Whatever. I don't know. Imagine, for instance, the fact that Mormons bring in missionaries from all over and imagine that for a moment this guy's like, no, we only have to have, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an alt-right guy. We only have to have white missionaries, so I'm going to take him out. At that point, you could say, yeah, this is a politically motivated example. But in this case, if he just hates Mormons, whoever he voted doesn't matter. However, let's look into it just to have a complete picture. Now, one picture that has been floating around Twitter is this one. And some people have used it to say, see, he's a Trump supporter because it says Trump here. Now, I'll be honest with you, it looks photoshopped. It doesn't look real. However, I found another picture, and this one instead was taken directly from his Facebook, and it's a lot clearer. Does it still look photoshopped? Maybe. You'll have to look into this because I'm not very good at figuring out. But for a moment, let's imagine that this is real. Okay, let's imagine that this is not photoshopped. If it's photoshopped, ditch it. But if it's not photoshopped, is this a pro-Trump shirt? The answer is no. Because if you look at it, it says, "Make America cry again." Not "Make America great again." Make America cry again. What does that mean? It's kind of a satirical type of t-shirts that, the way I understand it, they are similar to, in fact, this shop that sells them also sells "No Kings in America." Trump is a PEDO. I don't know if I can use that. WTF America. Make America party again. No Kings in America. Democracies have no kings. So as you can see, as you could see. If that shirt is real, it's an anti-Trump shirt. Just to make it clear. Not that it matters. Because I've seen people saying, oh, we found screenshots that he made large donations of sums of money to the Democratic Party. Apart from the fact that those, we don't know if they're real, because just because you see something on Twitter, it doesn't mean it's real. But even if it was true, I don't believe in this moment that it would matter. Because for what I could see, we'll watch the interview together, but I had a direct access to a person who spoke to him, and it looks like he wasn't interested in politics at all, and he was instead interested in how much he hated the Mormons. So even if he did vote for the Democratic Party at this point, it wouldn't be, unless we find something that says Mormons are bigots. That's different. Or Mormons are fascists. Okay, then it's a political assassination. You see where I'm going with this? It really depends. But the reason why I'm saying this now is because people saw this shirt, this picture that I just showed you, and said, Trump supporter. But then zoom in, for crying out loud. Zoom in. Now, another image that has been circulating, and this one is real, is that these signs were found on the premises of his house. A real piece of information. And I'd love to see how people are having dogfights over this. On one hand, we have Trump vans. So, of course, lefties are saying, see, MAGA. But then there is a massive stop sign underneath. So, of course, conservatives are now saying, no, it's stop Trump. So the guy is anti-Trump. This is crazy because, yeah, you can kind of interpret it both ways. This combination could very much well be stop Trump and Vance, in which case it's clearly an anti-Trump guy. On the other hand, maybe this could be interpreted, I'm trying to be realistic here, this could be interpreted as, well, the sign is stop, don't come any closer, and on top of it, it tells you, I'm pro-Trump. Now, both interpretation could make sense, but once again, if this shirt is real, then I would lean more onto the guy's anti-Trump. Once again, if the shirt is real. Continuing our investigation, it seems like that on his personal social media, he posted, never trust a POTUS whose IQ is 30 points lower than your own and failing. And this was posted 5 days ago. So if this is real, I always have to say if, but if this is real, who is the POTUS now? POTUS will be the president. So he would be insulting the current president, hence Trump. Once again, if this is real, it would appear to point to the fact that the guy was anti-Trump. And regardless of that, I would like to underline, what a stupid looking face. Man, it makes you want to slap it. As always, keeping in mind, at this point, a hateful, disgusting human being. That's what he is. And the reason why I'm so mad is because some of the victims were children. His targets were little kids at church. I'd like to, and among the adults. I don't know if that was intentional. It doesn't matter at this point. He just started shooting on a crowd. Horrible. Yeah, you are the one with high IQ, I guess. So, as I was saying, to have a complete picture, we need to see if there is a manifesto. We need to see if there is any writing on other bullets or magazines. Hopefully the authorities will let us know. At the moment, it's kind of open for him to, he could possibly be any political position. But I'll be honest with you, if this is another guy who is a far left guy, that this is a pattern. I mean, it's already a pattern, but it will be even more so. Now, there is something I want to show you because this is absolutely phenomenal. Like, this is something that, have you ever witnessed a single-digit IQ? Let me show you. So an absolute imbecile left a comment by the name was Will Cattis, left a comment on my video, the previous video, when I discussed the shooting. And he said, he quotes me, 3 minutes 20. The man was killed. Good, I'm glad, close quotes. That's what I say about the shooter. He adds, did a lefty say this about Kirk, or did Metatron say this about this guy? Being upset about lefties saying exactly this about one man's death, and then doing the exact same about another's. I thought you were better than this. Oh my gosh, you absolute Denisovan. In fact, no, Denisovans could make jewelry. This guy cannot make anything. You imbecile. This is a case of false equivalence. On one hand, we have Charlie Kirk, who is a victim, since his death was caused by an assassin. Charlie Kirk is the victim. He's dead. The hundreds of thousands of radical lefties who laughed at him and his death are in the wrong morally, and I call them out. On the other hand, now, we have the shooter, who is not a victim, and his death is caused by law enforcement. You guys did a fantastic job, by the way. Police officers, 27 seconds, they were there, engaged courageously in a gunfight and took him down. He was neutralized because he was a threat, since he was the ongoing shooter. The victims being the ones he shot. The fact that I have to explain this. So, Me being glad that he was shot dead, not laughing really, I didn't laugh. But now I'm laughing at you because you're an idiot, but I didn't laugh. I never laughed at the loss of life. During this event, I wouldn't laugh. But I was glad, and I'll say it again, good that he was taken down, because that way he was stopped and he was prevented to claim more victims, since this was a mass murderer. How you think this is your... So yes, I'm glad that the shooter was dead. The two things have nothing to do with each other. And you think this is your gotcha moment? Like, this is what this absolute cretin thinks, this Neanderthal specimen thinks, that he called me out. Hey, I called Metatron out, that hypocrite. Look, that's the... Oh my gosh, sometimes I wish my critics were at least double-digit IQ, because at least it would make it into a challenge. This is... Anyways, yeah, I'm glad they shot the mass shooter before he could continue in his spree. That does not make... I'm going to drop it. Will Curtis, why are you even watching my videos? Why don't you just go back to Reddit where you came from? I swear, Charlie Kirk was the one willing to speak to the likes of you, had the patience of a saint. I don't. You shot the guy who wanted to talk to the likes of your ilk. I'm not talking shit.
Hello, everyone. I'm talking to Chris right now, and you contacted me a short time ago. Pretty distraught because actually, earlier today, you came to the realization that you say that you talked to the person who did this horrible thing in Grambling Township.
I did last week. It was Wednesday or Thursday. I'm running for city council and I'm canvassing, and I had an address on my map that I went to, and I came across a gentleman. He was very friendly, and he had interacted positively with me, and we got out of the vehicle. We started just to talk, and after a short while, the conversation went to the Church of Latter-day Saints, Mormonism, and he just made the position multiple times that Mormons are the Antichrist. And he, in not so many terms, said that several times. He gave me his background, but I just walked away from a person who had some very sharp views about Mormons.
You see, so it's clearly a case, from the witness perspective, it's really a case of hatred towards Mormons. It doesn't seem to be politically motivated. It seems to be he just hated the church. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, so you were just out campaigning for the election in November coming up, I'm assuming?
That is correct.
And so you're just shaking hands, looking to meet people. You come across his door. Have you matched it up? Is it the address the same as this person? Have you looked?
It is, yes. I mean, it is not only the address, but it's also the person that I spoke with. I have a friend in Utah who is involved with the LDS Church. I sent him a voice message saying I had a conversation with a person who had very sharp views, and it's just like you come across a lot of different people while you campaign. Yeah. And I shared this with him on Friday, and then we had our Sunday dinner, and I ended up seeing a photo. That was the exact guy I spoke to last week.
So you saw the guy, and I'm not gonna, the shooter. You saw his picture on the news or on social media, and what was your first reaction?
Shock. I mean, to have just interacted with a person who, again, he had very sharp views. And when we first started speaking, very positive, we just made this general chit chat. And then he went to his background, how he was a Marine. He had served overseas. And again, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm just going from memory, but he, to start new, had moved out to Utah to plow snow. He then began a relationship with a woman who was in the LDS Church.
That's it.
And then the conversation changed to tattoos, which he had a lot of, and how he had to have all his tattoos removed in order to be, in for certain religious ceremonies. And it was just a piece where I was very careful how I answered, because it's one of those things where I did not know what response was going to be acceptable to him. And so it's a case of like, I just wanted to get off the door and away from him.
So you just wanted to be nice and say, okay, have a nice day.
Exactly. And just try to do it the easiest way possible while kind of just walking.
You see, so it was a guy who had a problem with the church specifically because of this previous relation that, of course, didn't go well. But then he had to remove the tattoos, I guess, because he had usually, I mean, I imagine for certain ceremonies, probably, the wedding. I mean, it's kind of weird, though. Usually, unless you're a member of the church, but even members of the church, if you have a previous tattoo, it's not like you have to remove it. Usually you cover it up. Like you can wear long sleeves if you're doing like a baptism, for instance, or if you're doing a talk in church and you have tattoo. But I've never heard of the church actually telling you, no, you have to remove the tattoos. It's usually that they tell you not to do tattoos if you're like brought up in the church. And because they say, the body's the temple of the spirit, and so you don't want to desecrate it. And that kind of approach, absolutely. But if you, it's just because you start a relationship with a Mormon lady, unless she was very pushy, but then it was her who was pushy, not why are you taking it over to the entire church? Not that I'm saying that you should have taken it with her, but I'm trying to, why am I even trying to understand the psyche of a weirdo anyways?
And, you know, one step at a time. And again, when I first started, you know, my daughter was with me. She was in the car because we're, you know, driving from house to house. He was very nice. I mean, he was extremely nice. My daughter has special needs. She reached out to him. He held her hand. He was he talked about his child who had a serious medical concern and how just the care there.
Mm.
For whatever reason, the conversation shifted from chit chat into what are your thoughts about the Church of Latter-day Saints.
So he was obsessed. That's obsessive behavior, by the way. It's an obsessive mental disorder, clearly. And also I would like to underline, he left a son who had special needs. So the guy was a coward. I don't even care he was deployed in Iraq. He was a coward. If you leave a son like that and you shoot children at church, you're a coward. It's an insult to the good veterans, who are the majority of veterans, by the way. The good veterans who serve this country. Thank you for your service, guys.
And again, my cousin played football at BYU. I have friends who, so I have a history with BYU in the Mormon Church. You don't know what you're going to say that could potentially cause a reaction. So I kept my views to myself and just and walked away.
So at no time did you feel there wasn't any threatening or violence? It was just kind of you thought off the wall kind of talking.
Exactly. It wasn't like next week, this Sunday, I'm going to do. It was more of a case of just views that were shared. And again, I mean, what I just walked away from was a person who was very animated and it mentioned that, for lack of a better term, that Mormons were the Antichrist.
Okay. And obviously troubling, but nothing that you would have need to alert police for anything.
No, I mean, not to say just
good luck with that. I mean, with the kind of stuff that people say these days.
In pop culture, but if you listen to enough YouTube, social media, like you hear different views on either side. And so it wasn't anything that I would say was violence inducing, but just people of all stripes have very sharp views. And I was like, okay. And I just, again, you know, I have a very indirect relationship with the Church of Latter-day Saints. And I just kept those views to myself and just very carefully walked away.
Okay. So, and
well, yeah, you don't want to begin a confrontation with a stranger while your daughter is with you. I mean, yeah.
You are saying that you are 100% sure this is the same individual you talked to. Was it last week?
Yes, it was last Wednesday or Thursday. Dave, 1,000,000% I spoke with him. I
Now,
can remember, where his house is. I had a conversation. Yes.
Okay. A lot of people want always to know in these horrible situations why someone does this. So in your mind, this maybe answers that question.
It has to be. I mean, there was very little political talk when we spoke, and it wasn't that. I mean, Dave, outside of just like, hey, how are you? How's the weather? It immediately shifted towards his thoughts on the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. How you live in the community. How sad is this? Because I got the call this morning. I heard about it. I just hard to believe. I mean, I live about.
Of course, now they go into this. I think we listened to what we needed to listen when it comes to this and the information. So it does appear to be a private matter, if you will, of just hatred and intolerance towards people who hold different beliefs than you. So keep an open mind and let's keep watching. Stay safe. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is the information I have so far. If more information comes out, like a manifesto, like some statements written on bullets or ammo or magazines, I guess I'll make a third video. But up to now, thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.